What? Don't you want to ask where I went? You'll tell me if you want to, Han Qiongji said with her eyes closed. She didn't respond to his caress. Li Qingshan forcefully turned her around, and only then was she forced to open her eyes. She pursed her lips and said nothing. However, Li Qingshan clearly read her thoughts. I've already been so considerate of you. Are you still dissatisfied? Li Qingshan felt great pity for her. She had never been a delicate woman. After going through so many things, she had gained a sense of tenacity. Let me tell you, I just killed a few people, and then I went to find Chu Danqing. Smack! Han Qiongji knocked his hand away and sat up. Don't touch me. Tell me properly. I'm listening. Li Qingshan sat up as well and told her everything. He even did not hide the fact that he had killed the masked cultivator under the green vine mountain as Niu Juxia. Niu Juxia, Han Qiongji murmured to herself. She did not have much of an impression of Niu Juxia, but just this fake identity was enough for her to think of many things. If she investigated it in detail, it would become even more thought-provoking. That's one of my secrets. It really was you who killed Zhuo Zhibua, who told that old bastard to go too far. Han Qiongji let out a long sigh. Actually, I'd rather you tell me you have another woman outside. How? I wish your secret was just that simple. Is that so? I have another woman outside. Before Li Qingshan had even finished speaking, Han Qiongji threw a slap at him. Li Qingshan grabbed her hand. Oi, oi, isn't that what you wanted to hear? Bastard man, don't forget what you promised me in the past. You go back on your word. You're heartless. Didn't you say it was fine afterwards? Never. Who is that woman? Han Qiongji grabbed Li Qingshan's neck with both hands and bared her teeth like an angry female leopard. She glared at Li Qingshan fiercely. You changed your mind so quickly. Li Qingshan felt like he had been tricked. How stupid. For a woman, this was clearly the most intolerable thing. Forget it. I also know that I'm not a charming woman. If one day I get tired of it and want to find another woman, just tell me. Don't be so fussy. You're not like a man. I look down on you. Han Qiongji suddenly let go of him and lay down with her back, facing him. I'm not a charming man either. If one day you get tired of it and want to find another man, just tell me. Don't be so fussy. You're too much like a woman. I look down on you. Li Qingshan said seriously. You said, I'm not like a woman. I won't find another man. Being tricked once is enough. Then there's nothing I can do. However, according to my field observations, Qiongji, you're still very much like a woman. Li Qingshan smiled, although he couldn't indulge himself wantonly, and even had to be careful. There was a kind of happiness and joy in the mutual affection between them. Although he hated that he couldn't drink all the water in the world, to him, she was the most ordinary but also the most special existence. The sky was bright. Perhaps it was because Li Qingshan had done it too cleanly, but the disappearance of those cultivators did not attract any attention. Everyone's gazes were attracted by the competition of the School of Miscellany. The School of Miscellany would bring out new goods every day, and the value was getting higher and higher. The atmosphere of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures gradually heated up. In the empty room, a mass of darkness suddenly distorted and expanded, turning into a pitch-black figure that looked around. Chapter 638. Several days later, after a great auction involving 9 stores of miscellaneous goods, the competition between the schools of miscellany came to an end. However, due to the losses from the war, the Clear River Prefecture only ranked last in the end, which was within expectations. Afterwards came the competition between the schools of music. As graceful music rang out, the bustling market turned into a grand concert. The exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures proceeded in an orderly fashion. Li Qingshan and Han Qiongji were together day and night, inseparable as if they had returned to their passionate love of the past. Under Li Qingshan's intentional honesty, then Han Qiongji learnt about his secret past bit by bit. The schools of novels made her feel very sweet inside. All called out. She never mentioned the fact that he had another woman outside again. Make the decision. Finally, the competition between the schools of novels still wanted to argue. Began. Li Qingshan waved his hand. The regular disciples of the schools competed. Then I won't use arcane artifacts. They pushed their divine talisman of great creation to the limit, away all the arcane artifacts into real and illusions into reality, creating a myriad of attacks. Even if Si Qing found out about this, the kid could not help but sigh. Did he even need arcane artifacts? Sure enough, a bunch of repulsive novels like you, unique for the founding emperor to name it as one of the 10 schools of the late foundation establishment. These competitions among us only the appetizers. Your skilled in competition between the disciples ended. If we fight, it was time for the foundation establishment cultivators without the divine talisman of great creation, which goes against the purpose of the exhibition matches of the 9 prefectures. The leaders of the schools of novels from the other 8 prefectures, Wang Luocheng rejoiced slightly inside. They seemed to be continued with his request with their soul sense. That's for your arrogance. The first match, how dare you offend the Prefecture against the Lecking Prefecture? The schools of novels, disciples of the Clear River encouraging gazes, were all furious. Li Qingshan smiled since at Han when were there battles between and made his way onto the square, leading to a series of cheers. Li Qingshan said, after waiting for a while, then he did not see his opponent appear. It's not just around. And the disciples of the schools of novels from the various prefectures, you can't use any other battle skills or techniques. No, this isn't fair. All right. The leader of the school of novels from the Lecking Prefecture, you seem to practice the arts of body practitioners, called out. Li Qingshan smiled. He was supposed to face Li Qingshan. You want me to fight after you personally with my hands Li Qingshan's clash with caretaker I practiced the arts of body practitioners. He did not feel like he had any confidence so my body is relatively tough too. Fortunately, don't you want me to stab myself the countermeasures and become restrained heavily injured first? Only then will asked in surprise. What's unfair about that? It led to a war of laughter. Exhibition matches. Even the cultivators of the 100 schools from the other 8 competing on the ultimate found these requests to be rather unreasonable. If you had a body full of magical artifacts, filled their eyes, wouldn't you be suppressing others with your power? How can Why did someone like him join the school of novels? The school of novels was renowned for their sleaziness and focusing on vulgar storytelling technique, turning the tables on the guest. Lu so it's original creation either. The other schools of novels, various hundred schools of also agreed it was not well received. This way, for the school of novels of the Clear River only have one in terms of Dharma treasures. It was mainly because any cultivator could win. That the schools of novels of the other prefectures had managed to pull themselves together. If you want to compete, although the schools of novels of the other prefectures had learned the ways of management from the Cloud Wisp Association angrily and increased their own strength, don't spout their status was still not that great. Wasn't it always like this? Some disciples of the school of novels instead showed signs the novelists of developing all the vulgar storytelling technique. It was already considered they even emulated Li Qingshan's partnership with the school of on painting, an inferior hiring disciples of the school of painting even if the situation had changed a lot and inventing there was no clan head like the could be armed to the teeth like after all Qingshan. Only children like to read fairy tales. Shook his head while this was something suitable for both young and old. The past is the past. Reading the present once was not enough. The rules they even had to keep it in secret and read it over and over again. When they got excited, they were tempted to substitute the main character and crawl into the book and have a go at it. Sure enough, they received a tremendous amount of power of belief, but their reputation obviously became even worse. If you're willing, then we obviously have no objections. Wang Luoqing shook his head, acting like he was invincible as long as he was shameless. After tasting the benefits of the Cloud Wisp Association, he could already see a vast path of cultivation opening up to him. In order to occupy a leading position in the Greater Cloud Wisp Association, he had to restrict this Li Qingshan to the point of death. Li Qingshan was amused by this. This bastard really did resemble Lu Chuanfeng in the past. After thinking about it, he said, "How about this? In order to save some time, the 8 of you can come at me together. I won't use arcane artifacts, techniques, or battle skills, but you can all use them. That should be fine, right?" The spectators were thrown into an uproar. These were all a part of a cultivator's strength. He had already underestimated his opponent slightly by not allowing his opponent to use them, yet he still wanted to take on the 8 of them alone. Wasn't his defeat certain? Although most of them had heard of Li Qingshan's name, they had only truly seen him fight in the air above the Marquis estate. He had only clashed with caretaker Zheng a few times, which was rather tricky. If it were not for the power of his arcane artifacts and his ingenious battle skills, it would have been impossible for him to achieve that. "Qingshan, you mustn't." Lu Chuanfeng even tried to stop him loudly. Li Qingshan turned a deaf ear to him, while Sun Fubai said, "Junior brother, Qingshan has his own plans. His decision isn't something you or I can change. Let's just wait and see." "Is that true?" Wang Luoqing's eyes lit up. Si Qing, who watched from afar on the soaring clouds terrace, smiled scornfully. "Yenying, this subordinate of yours doesn't seem to be too smart." Gu Yenying said, "Actually, he's the same as you. He hates battles that have no suspense or difficulty." "Do you think he can be mentioned in the same breath as me?" Si Qing squinted his eyes. "I think his accomplishments in the future will definitely surpass yours. Of course, they'll probably surpass mine as well." Gu Yenying smiled. Probably not a lot of people understood better than her just what kind of situation he had started from and just what level he had reached. He could sense that he would definitely play a relatively important role on the stage of the 9 provinces in the future. He might even have the chance to stand side by side with the various kings. Even right now, a clone of his is enough to give you, a mighty prince, quite a headache. Such a high evaluation even made Si Qing slightly moved. "Looks like you really think highly of this child. However, most geniuses in the world die young. Very soon, I'll kill him in the cradle with my own hands. A genius that dies young is not a genius." Returning to the field, Li Qingshan said proudly, "Of course, Li Qingshan, let's not waste any more time. I've heard of your name for a long time. Come quickly. Thank you for thinking of a way to revitalize and the 7 other school leaders reached an agreement. There's a saying from the ancients, let's take down this arrogance leads to madness. Immediately, you might not realize the 8 foundation establishment cultivators stood up and drew their own spiritual or arcane artifacts. No matter how strong you are, you're just a tiger. They were all hostile and teeth pulled out, only lacking vicious grins. It's better for you to surrender obediently, lest you rang out from the surroundings. The school of novels. But they turned a deaf ear to them. Shamelessness was trying to use words something that could be trained in a day. There were also people who were worried that such an unfair battle would cause Lu Chuanfeng even if I can't win, so I can still make sure you can't. School leader Lu, Wang Luoqing's expression changed slightly. At this moment, if Li Qingshan really attacked him crazily, he would inevitably be injured. With a dark expression, he would be at a great disadvantage in the upcoming competition with the other prefectures. So that was what he had in mind. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Why did I stand out and say so much nonsense? He smiled shamefully and said, "Don't misunderstand. What happened just now was the result of everyone's discussion. It wasn't my decision alone, so you don't have to blame it all on me. Is that so? I wonder who came up with such a brilliant plan. I'll have to thank him properly. Li Qingshan's gaze swept across the faces of the other 7 people. They either puffed out their chests and raised their heads to show their innocence, or their eyes flickered, not daring to meet Li Qingshan's eyes. They were all afraid that Li Qingshan would fight like a cornered beast and target them crazily. Dang! The strong man struck the gong, the sound reverberating for 10. Li, let the sparring begin. Li Qingshan's body leaned forward, and with a boom, 2 deep pits were blasted open under his feet. He flew up and pounced toward Wang Luocheng. He was like a ferocious tiger released from its cage, unstoppable. It was true that he didn't use any spells or battle techniques, but his killing intent, which had been honed through hundreds of battles, was faster than any spells or battle techniques. He charged toward Wang Luocheng. Chapter 639. Wang Luocheng had many hobbies in his life, such as walking dogs, cockfighting, drinking wine, and playing with women. He was good at many things, but not one of them was fighting. Intimidated by Li Qingshan's killing intent, his brain slowed down a little. He instinctively retreated, hoping that someone else could block him. However, the others didn't expect Li Qingshan to attack, just like that, and with such momentum. Their reactions were also a little slow. After all, the School of Novels wasn't known for being good at fighting. Because the power of what was hard to come by, they couldn't practice fighting like the other schools. They were more willing to transform into beauties and practice on the bed. Of course, some of them were really slow, while others wanted to let Li Qingshan and Wang Luocheng drag it out. In the end, both of them would be injured and 2 competitors would be eliminated. As their eyes darted around, they realized that no one was a fool. Thus, the 8 of them surrounded and instantly turned into a one-on-one battle between Li Qingshan and Wang Luocheng. Wang Luocheng also realized that he had been betrayed. He cursed in his heart, "Those who write novels aren't good people." His stunned mind recovered a little, and he immediately activated the divine talisman of great creation, creating a huge door made of refined steel. It was a foot thick. At the same time, he quickly activated the protective spirit tool on him. As long as he could stop Li Qingshan for a moment, the others couldn't just stand by and watch. However, before Wang Luoqing could breathe a sigh of relief, there was a loud bang, and the huge door twisted inwards. Li Qingshan broke through it, as if he had smashed through a paper door, his 5 fingers reaching out to grab Wang Luoqing's face. Only a few people saw clearly that in the instant Li Qingshan collided with the door, his hands pressed on it dozens of times in a complicated manner, destroying the structure of the door from its foundation. Wang Luoqing was shocked, and he let out a strange cry. A flying sword flew out of his sleeve, piercing toward Li Qingshan's chest. The sword shone with spiritual light, and it was also an artifact. Although it was the weakest, inferior artifact, its power was not to be underestimated. Lu Chuanfeng couldn't help but stand up. His face was filled with anger and worry. Without a protective spell or artifact, how could he block the flying sword with just his own spirit force? However, Li Qingshan completely ignored the flying sword. He unleashed a vicious aura, like he was determined to smash Wang Luoqing's head to pieces. Wang Luoqing was utterly shocked. He staggered backwards, but his mind was distracted. The glow on the flying sword immediately dimmed, slightly, and it slowed down too. Li Qingshan smiled and flicked with his left hand. At the same time, his right hand turned into a fist and punched toward Wang Luoqing's chest. With a bang, the spiritual light scattered, and Wang Luoqing was sent flying while coughing up blood. His protective spiritual artifact had already been shattered. There was only a thin layer of protective spiritual light, so how could it block Li Qingshan's fist? Wang Luoqing was only in the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, so he was 2 realms lower than Li Qingshan. His cultivation technique could not compare to the arts of the boundless ocean, not to mention the difference in body tempering. Li Qingshan didn't even use the ox demon's immense strength. In the end, he still held back 30% of his strength. Otherwise, it wouldn't be strange for him to have killed Wang Luoqing with a single punch. Wang Luoqing fell unconscious on the ground, and the medical disciples carried him away for treatment. Li Qingshan turned around and faced the remaining 7 people. He raised a finger and said, "1." Although they had gone through many battles of wits and courage, in the eyes of the bystanders, Li Qingshan had killed a Foundation establishment cultivator with a single pounce, as expected of his reputation. Even without using an artifact or battle technique, he's still so ferocious. Tie, is he really a disciple of the School of Novels? I think he's clearly a disciple of our School of the Military. The leader of the School of the Military of the Hanyang and prefecture was filled with surprise. The leaders of the other prefectures all stood to one side, surrounding Han Tie. The Han family had held the position of great general for many years, so the disciples of the School of the Military in the Rui Commandery were all old subordinates. They were on good terms with one another. As a result, when they mentioned Li Qingshan, they all referred to him as son-in-law. Han Tie said he really should join the School of the Military. Fortunately, he's a disciple of the School of Novels. Otherwise, if he were representing the School of the Military, we could just directly forfeit. Han Tie said, "Do you really think you can win right now? Kid, don't be cocky. We're going to test you this year and see whether you're a good father and a bad son." Everyone laughed aloud. Someone said, "Look, the son-in-law has struck again." Li Qingshan's body surged with dreamy, faint, blue light. He thought, this is the exhibition match of the School of Novels after all. If I don't use the divine talisman of great creation, they'll be dissatisfied even if I win. I might as well make them accept it wholeheartedly. He powered the divine talisman of great creation wholeheartedly. Slivers of power of belief were drawn out, gradually weaving into a humanoid figure bones, blood vessels, and meridians. He had never powered the divine talisman of great creation so seriously before. Everyone, let's use our full strength together. The remaining 7 cultivators from the School of Novels all returned to their senses. Seeing how fiercely Qingshan was, none of them dared to think about anything else anymore. If he really won against 8 of them alone, they would be utterly humiliated. If Li Qingshan knew what they were thinking, he would definitely be extremely surprised. You still know how to be shameless. For spiritual artifacts, and 3 arcane artifacts charged towards Li Qingshan together. At the same time, they conjured blades, spears, swords, and halberds with the divine talisman of great creation, all of which lunged towards Li Qingshan. The attacks were numerous and powerful, making the spectators feel that the School of Novels was not as useless as they were rumored to be. Li Qingshan soared into the air, drawing the water, fire, and spears towards the horizon. The figure he had painstakingly created had already taken shape. It was a young man in blue, dressed in a rustic manner. His face was also covered in dust, but his facial features were handsome, and he exuded an air of righteousness. He cupped his fists and said, "I am Tsing Anyo, and I would like to seek guidance from all of you seniors." Li Qingshan scratched his head. His original intention was to draw the attacks away and let Tsing Anyo take the chance to launch a sneak attack. He hadn't expected Tsing Anyo to be so open and above board, just like what was written in the books. It seemed that the characters conjured by the School of Novels were no ordinary puppets. The higher the level of the divine talisman of great creation, the more intelligent the characters would be. Only by borrowing the coercive power of the divine talisman of great creation could they make them do things that went against their nature. No one had expected Li Qingshan to spend so much effort to conjure such a country bumpkin. One of the leaders of the School of Novels had specially studied Li Qingshan's works, and he shouted, "Everyone, don't be careless, he is Zhang." "Nonsense, all of you, die." Tsing Anyo roared, interrupting him. He raised his hands high and said, "Power of the Dragon Slayer, heavenly strike." His originally rustic and honest face was instantly beaming with joy, and his aura was blazing. The muscles all over his body bulged and tore through his clothes, fluttering about like butterflies. A huge silvery white sword appeared above his head, and a golden dragon coiled around the sword hilt. He swung it down with great force. The silvery white sword light lit up the heaven and earth, and the incomparably sharp sword Qi whistled out, slashing toward the 7 people from the School of Novels. On the snowy cliff, as he channeled spiritual chi into the three absolutes calligraphy, it shone with resplendent light, becoming brighter and brighter. Below the snowy mountain, the chi practitioners were locked in a fierce struggle. Blades and swords clashed as they fought fiercely. Even if someone noticed the faint light at the top of the snowy mountain, they would not be able to pay attention to it right now. A battle like this unfolded across the entire dragon arena. However, Si Qing's words had thrown them into an uproar, but they did not immediately engage in a battle to the death like Si Qing had hoped. They all held back when they struck out. After determining a victor, they would say, "I admire you," and they would say, "Thank you for going easy on me." Regardless of whether they were furious or not, they still maintained the principles of the cultivation community on the surface. As a matter of fact, many foundation establishment cultivators refused to fight chi practitioners from other sects or schools out of consideration for their status. Even if they did fight, they would only take their medals. They would never rob or kill again. The inertia left behind by several thousand years of peace could not be broken with just a few words from a single person. Si Qing seemed to have miscalculated in this aspect. This was not the Dragon Province, after all. There was no atmosphere of bloody battles. Cultivators were not exactly righteous, but they were not demonic cultivators either. Sure enough, they're all trash from top to bottom. They don't even know what bloodthirst and killing intent are. These old bastards are still afraid to kill me even now. Only that Li Qingshan is something. Looks like I'll have to use that move. Si Qing, who had turned into a black dragon and soared through the air, was about to engage in a fierce battle with the Golden Core cultivators. So he diverted his attention. In the dragon arena, there was a flash of blood-red light. The azure sky in the battlefields was dyed with a layer of blood red. The blood red color was so thin that even if cultivators focused their attention, they would struggle to notice anything amiss. Li Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes and raised his head at the sky. All he saw were thick, frozen clouds and howling wind and snow. In that moment earlier, the tiger demon that had been suppressed by the spirit turtle and deposited in his sea of consciousness let out a deep growl. Boundless killing intent enveloped him, but the killing intent was far too thin and chaotic. It did not originate from a specific target, nor was it directed at him. What's that kid Si Qing up to now? Thinking of that, Li Qingshan closed his eyes again and devoted his mind to the three absolutes calligraphy. He did not stop channeling spiritual chi during this process. The three absolutes calligraphy was like a whale sucking in water, greedily sucking away his spiritual chi until 30% of his sea of chi was empty. Just now it had stopped. It shone with extremely resplendent light. Li Qingshan was slightly surprised. He was a peak foundation establishment cultivator. His spiritual chi surpassed regular foundation establishment cultivators, yet the three absolutes calligraphy was only a mid-grade spiritual artifact. There was no time to think too much. According to his past experience of refining the cursive sword calligraphy, a storm was about to arrive. Sure enough, in that moment, all of the spiritual chi was converted into sharp sword chi from the three absolutes calligraphy, flowing against the flow through his meridians and rampaging through his body wildly. At the same time, in the void world where all kinds of strokes were floating, the horizontal and vertical strokes suddenly became round and full like balloons filled with air. They were filled with an incomparably sharp sword intent and flew toward him. Li Qingshan seemed to see the five absolutes sword immortal wielding his brush as a sword and swinging it around after drinking. It was almost like an illusion, but he had no doubt that if he were struck by these strokes, his soul would definitely be severely damaged. If he were a regular foundation establishment cultivator, they would be heavily injured even if they managed to survive an internal and external attack like this. His body shuddered, and his muscles bulged, becoming 100 times tougher than rock. His tightly shut eyes immediately turned scarlet red. The sword Qi rampaged through his body, but it was unable to break through the ox demon's mountainous body. It was forcefully guided into his sea of Qi. However, they were still like huge fish wreaking havoc in his sea of Qi. Not only did the sword Qi not weaken, but it even absorbed even more spiritual Qi instead, becoming sharper and sharper. If he were a regular Foundation establishment cultivator, all he could do was watch helplessly as his spiritual Qi was drained dry and his body forcefully ripped apart by the sword Qi. But before that, his consciousness would have already been shattered by the sword intent. Who would have thought refining a mid-grade arcane artifact would actually be filled with such terrifying danger? The spirit turtle suppresses the seas. Li Qingshan bellowed inside. The spirit turtle's demon core sank into a sea of Qi and suppressed all of the sword Qi. The figure of the spirit turtle directly appeared in his sea of consciousness, blocking all of the sword intent. Originally, he thought that would be a success, but the three absolutes' calligraphy showed no signs of being refined. With a thought, the figure of the tiger demon leapt out, opening its gaping mouth and devouring all of the sword intent. When it mattered, it could even be used to attack the enemy, like controlling artifacts. Only those at a higher realm of cultivation could directly suppress it, but it definitely would not be as easy as it was for him. It's no wonder that when Si Qing dug me out from the Mist Province in the past, I could vaguely sense a change in the heavenly secrets. Sure enough, I've encountered an interesting person. This kid is anything but ordinary. He's fated with me. As the Banyan Tree King thought, he opened up another path. Are you all right? Do you want to stay here and rest? Li Qingshan could sense that Hua Qinglu's breathing was rather disorderly. Her heartbeat had sped up, and her body temperature had risen by several degrees. It was not like he was an innocent young man who had never been with a woman before, so he could obviously guess that it was because of him. He smiled faintly, Her clothes were all woven from the precious silk of spiritual silkworms. Although they seemed tight, they were actually extremely thin. Under such a tight embrace, he could basically picture the outline of her body in his head. Hua Qinglu bit her lip and shook her head gently. She did not want to stay here alone, but if she separated from him right now, she would really be admitting to some strange feeling. Li Qingshan smiled at this act of deceiving himself and set off on his journey again. He had to admit that the feeling of hugging her was quite nice. He added in a very impudent manner, "Don't blame me if you flatten me." It almost drove Hua Qinglu crazy. "Didn't you say you could not flirt with a friend's sister? Men are all perverts. Not a single one of them is good. Even if they flatten me, it's none of your business." She bared her teeth and glared at Li Qingshan like a cat with its fur standing on end, which made Li Qingshan laugh aloud. He slaughtered his way through, truly unstoppable. Wherever he passed by, the insects fell to the ground. Only 7 of them had reached Demon General, and several hundred of them were regular demons. There were even more weaker demons, basically numbering in the tens of thousands. Although Li Qingshan did not stop, it still took him 16 to 19 hours to freeze all the burrowing mites and stuff them into the bug pouch. Counting the time, it was almost 24 hours, which was an entire day. The battlefield would vanish very soon. He had gained quite a lot from this trip, and he had achieved his original objective. Although he did not stop for even a moment, he mainly exhausted his mind and the energy from the demon heart in the traitorous demon sword. His spiritual chi was constantly recovering, and it had completely filled his dantian now. The sword chi from the incomplete sword had become even more powerful, absorbing a total of 70% of his spiritual chi. However, after reaching 50%, the rate of absorption slowed down, and it was becoming slower and slower. If he wanted to nurture this sword chi to its full power, it would probably take more than a few days. It was also because the great banyan tree was denser with spiritual chi than any place of cultivation. It was no wonder that 7 of the insect demons that cultivated slowly had become demon generals. 70% was enough to kill people anyway, so there was no need for perfection. Li Qingshan stopped and clasped his hands. "Fellow, it's about time. I'm going to leave." Then he said to Hua Qinglu in his arms, "Qinglu, just wait here for a while. I'll lead those guys to another battlefield first. They've guarded this place for so long, so there probably won't be any other cultivators in this battlefield. You'll probably be the only one teleporting, so it won't be too dangerous. However, you still have to be prepared. Don't be stingy with your talismans." All right. Hua Qinglu only returned to her senses after a moment of surprise. She agreed, but her arms remained wrapped tightly around his waist. Chapter 655. Hua Qinglu let out a soft moan. She was unwilling to endure the pain, but at the same time it was accompanied by indescribable joy. Extremely pure, with spiritual chi surged into her body, immediately replacing all the true chi she had cultivated arduously for over a decade. Afterwards, it merged into her body strand by strand, circulating automatically according to the method of springtime bloom. The first layer, second layer. In the blink of an eye, she had pushed her cultivation to the 8th layer once more. Afterwards, she continued onwards, reaching the 9th layer, then the 10th layer. All the meridians in her body were connected by spiritual chi, which was countless times purer and more abundant than the spiritual chi she had originally cultivated arduously. It filled her dantian and sea of chi. The great banyan tree was nothing more than a drop in the ocean to the banyan tree king, and the spiritual chi that had entered Hua Qinglu's body was nothing more than a drop in the ocean. However, to a puny Qi practitioner, it was a gift so great that she could not endure it. Originally, this was already her limit. The banyan tree king might have been able to cleanse her body and break through minor realms of Qi practitioner, but he could not force her to break through to major realms. She still needed to cultivate and comprehend on her own, but who knew how long this would take? Gully, wake up. Guard your mind. Don't forget who you are. Suddenly, the banyan tree king's voice rang out in her head. It was the complete opposite of her request to relax her body and mind just now. Hua Chenglu did her best to recover a sliver of clarity from the great joy of breaking through. She thought to herself, I am Hua Chenglu. The vast and complicated information exploded violently. In the past, she seemed to be in a dark maze, constantly searching for a way out for her own path of life and cultivation. In that moment, the walls of the maze suddenly collapsed. Scorching white light shone in, and the layers of maze and darkness that plagued her completely vanished. Even her body seemed to vanish, only leaving behind her soul that rapidly expanded in the light. She was like someone who had been blind, deaf, and stupid for their entire lives, suddenly being able to see, hear, and think. It seemed like thousands of years, yet it also seemed like only an instant. She was completely submerged in great joy. For some reason, she thought to herself, this must be the land of ultimate bliss that Buddhists speak of. Don't forget who you are. The banyan tree king's aged voice rang out again. Hua Chenglu thought of the Jade Passage Chan Master story and was slightly surprised. Afterwards, she actually asked herself in some confusion, who am I? She was called Hua Chenglu, but that was just a name. Some things had vanished, some things had changed, and some things had appeared out of nowhere, completely fusing with her and becoming inseparable. However, there was no doubt that she had become stronger, both physically and mentally. However, it was as if she had missed out on many things. If a child became as mature as an adult overnight, he would miss out on the naivety of childhood and the frivolity of youth. The child might never know what kind of price he had paid, and there would only be a blank space in his memories. The aerial roots retracted into the tree, and Hua Chenglu drifted down from the air like a graceful petal. Boom! Thunder and lightning streaked across the void, baptizing all life forms that wanted to be reborn. Hua Chenglu did not panic at all. She spread her arms and welcomed the descent of the lightning. Ru Xian was rather vexed. As soon as she entered the dragon arena, she immediately went to rendezvous with Lu Chongqing's group. However, she ran into an uninvited guest along the way, a man who wielded a fiery red trident and burned with explosive flames. Zhu Lai.